listening to Never Off Duty. So today we are joined by Assistant Chief of Patrol. I'll let you introduce yourself because it's Domenic.
Paniccia.
One more time?
Paniccia.
Okay, so yeah, we'll mess that up.
That's not why.
And we also have Undersheriff Lendvay with us. Am I pronouncing that right? Because again, I'll mess it up.
Are.
All
no,
right,
you're
great.
on the money.
I
That
envy that easy name. I really do.
I know. I'm Judson Sapp. I don't think I've introduced myself in like 7 episodes. So that's me. And people mess my name up all the time too. They say Justin because
Sure.
J-U-D is a weird spelling for most people. But yeah, this is great. We are joined by these two. Both of you share a love of fishing. Or a hobby of fishing.
Absolutely.
It's probably a love-hate at times.
I never hated it.
I don't either.
That's awesome.
A bad day of fishing is always a good day.
I don't even want to call it. It's a passion. It really.
Yeah.
It's not even a hobby.
Oh, that's great. No, that's awesome. That is true. That is yeah. If you're having a bad day, maybe it's time to find a new hobby.
The only bad day of fishing is when you come home with an extra hook in you that wasn't there when you left the house. It's rare, but it does happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've done that before. I'm not. I don't have dexterity apparently, so I can hook somebody quick. But the Boy Scout comes in me, solve the problem. But
Yeah.
that's about it. So you are Assistant Chief of Patrol for the north of Clay County.
That's correct.
Correct.
North end of the county.
Which we're going to go into that in depth because I think
Sure.
that's our north end of Clay County. For those of you that are not in the county or listening, is more of the built up area, I guess the way to say it's more of a. It's kind of like an extension of Clay County. Hates when people say this, but it's an extension of Jacksonville. I mean, the city of Jacksonville is this massive beast that has basically just consumed North Florida and a whole entire county, and it just keeps growing. And so, as a city grows, things get pushed out. So I think a lot of the problems or uniqueness. I shouldn't say problems because a lot of it's good, positive stuff. But from you're in with law enforcement, you see a lot of the problems too. Comes from a city, a bigger
Sure.
city, and one of the bigger cities in Florida. Its problems come as us, so it's a different beast.
It is.
We've talked about Clay County in several times to describe it, but there's regions. So we have north and south. Is there any other way y'all break it up?
Nope, that's it right now. North sector and south sector, and each one of those has an assistant chief and then a chief over that.
Okay, great.
And I'm in the north, and you hit the nail on the head. It's basically you think of the north sector, you think of what borders Jacksonville. So your Wells Road, your Oakleaf areas, and then coming down south towards the Brandonfield area and stuff like that.
Which always surprises people that have never been to Oakleaf because it is an extremely short drive downtown from Oakleaf, but it's this beautiful community that's happens to be very close to downtown Jacksonville, which is kind of cool for somebody to be able to live in a different area than Jacksonville, but still be able to get there quickly if they work. Like I said, different beast. Clay County has extremely rural areas. We have rivers. We have large population centers. So it's very unique. You have the big shopping mall area.
I do. I have a lot of the big box stores, a lot of the retail stuff, a lot of the restaurants. But that's going to change. I think a lot of that's going to come south too in the future. So
yes,
I think the same things I'm dealing with now, we're going to deal with countywide.
Yes, you are, as the massive amount of construction in the area is teaching us all. So let's start with your background.
Sure.
What brought you to law enforcement? Because you've had you were in the military, you've done some things like that. So start us back in the beginning.
Okay.
When did you? I guess the first question would be, when did you first think about law enforcement?
Well, I'm one of them really unique guys. I grew up in the Northeast. I grew up really never thinking about law enforcement. It was I'm not one of them guys that said, man, when I was a kid, my father was a police officer and my uncle, and I just always wanted to be a police officer. I'm just being honest. It never crossed my mind until I went into the military. So I left the Northeast, came down south as a teenager, and had a desire to go into the military. I picked the Marine Corps, and when I went into the Marine Corps, when I was about to get out, everyone was talking about law enforcement. And I said, man, I like movies, but maybe I'll give this a shot. So I did a very a solo thing. I didn't know anybody. So I called the Clay County Sheriff's Office probably back in 1996, and I arranged a ride-along. And I'm going to tell you right now, that ride-along, the first hour I had in law enforcement, if you want, I'll share that story. And I said, sign me up.
Yeah,
I really did. I came out of the Marine Corps, so I signed up for that ride-along. They tell me to be at the Orange Park High School parking lot at like 6:30 p.m. Tell me what to wear. Once again, I don't know anybody. I don't have any kind of inside connection. And I'm standing there, and I don't know what to expect. And I see this car coming off of Blanding Boulevard, literally almost sideways with the blue lights on. And it turns down Kingsley, and I'm like looking, wow, that's pretty cool, right? And the next thing I know, that thing turns into Orange Park High School. And then I start thinking, is this guy messing with me? He flies up to me. He rolls the window down. He goes, you the ride-along? And I said, yeah. He goes, get in the car. So I jump in the car, and I'm like, okay. And he's like, put your seatbelt on. Put my seatbelt on, and we're going down Kingsley at a pretty high rate of speed. And I'm just holding on, and I'm like, this is my first minute in a police car. So he goes, we're going to a domestic situation, and there's, some weapons involved. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, just hold on. And we start taking these back roads onto Berry, and we end up at the apartments on Wells, taking them back roads. So it's pretty aggressive drive to get there. And I won't go into the gory details, but I will say when we arrive, there's somebody running out of a house injured with a wound, and the other person's inside. So I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to stay here. And he's like, come on. And I'm like, I'm good. He's like, yeah, you're good. So we go in this front door, just me and him. And we end up basically having to go hands on with the person inside and to take them in custody. And it was pretty good call. And when it was all over and I had that chance to take a breath, I literally looked at him and I just said, where do I sign up?
Oh, that's awesome.
I really did. And from that point, I went to the academy like I had to. And then it became a time when it wasn't as, there was a lot of people wanting to be officers back then. Right. So it wasn't as easy to kind of get a job back then. So I probably applied in 96 to 20 different agencies. And I got picked up, the first one, because you always want to get that certificate active. I got picked up by the Florida Department of Agriculture, which is pretty unique in its own right. And I got assigned to the Florida-Georgia line on 95, inspecting trucks, and not really what I like my first ride-along type of call. I went from that kind of a call to like making sure your cabbage was good.
Yep.
But hey, I took the job, and probably about 8 months later is when Clay County gave me the call. That's when I started my career here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's
1998 of July.
Well, you have been through then, so I grew up in Clay County. I've been here my whole life, so that's it's changed drastically since then. It's gone from a way more rural county to, we've got affluent areas now, which we didn't a long time ago, and things like that. So it's pretty changing. And it's pretty cool that you've been around to witness that, and you look pretty young. So I'm assuming you're going to be around for some of the change that we discussed off mic that's coming down the road too. Which
I'm a little older than I look, I think.
Okay,
I'm going to be 52 in a week.
So. Oh wow, yeah. No, good job.
Yeah,
good living.
So I've been through
hard living. I haven't figured it out yet because I look young too, but I'm 45. So
I've been through. I think I'm on my fifth sheriff. So
fifth sheriff. Wow.
I believe it's 5.
Wow. So you have seen a lot go on here in Clay County. But great. So that got you there. That's interesting because I always tell people, I like to ask those questions from sitting here on this side because I think a lot of people that listen to this podcast, obviously they're somewhat interested in law enforcement or at least the community, but the ones listening to law enforcement, sometimes it's in the back of their head like, or a young person, like, how do I do that? So I like to always ask the how you did it stories because everybody's got a different way to get there. And sometimes it's a calling, sometimes it's a job, and sometimes it's both. So there's no wrong answer of how you get there. I think this is a great time if you're interested to reach out to the sheriff's office. Do you know if it's claysheriff.com?
Yes, it is. We do have a recruiting site. And, like you said, you may end up here for a job or it could be a calling, but you can't do this job long-term if it's not a calling. Exactly. So when you get here, it's not the kind of job that you can just go to and punch a clock every day. You have got to be locked in and ready to do it.
like even me saying that growing up I never thought about it, but once I started doing it, it's crazy to say this now, but I bet everyone you talk to in the first 5 years, you're like, I do this job for free. This job is amazing.
Yeah. It's amazing to me the amount of first responders say that. My father-in-law was a fireman, and he said the same thing. He's like, he used to paint towers. So he was like, I needed a safer job. So I went to the fire department, but he went to it as a job. And then like he said, it was turned to calling just like that.
And then another great example of that is after probably 5 or 6 years, I left this line of work for private sector and came back. Did another ride along with people that now were my buddies that had been promoted, and one ride along and I got that, that burn again and said, I got to do it again. And now I've been back for 16 years. So.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. Once it gets in your blood, it's hard to get, shake it loose. When I was here speaking with you last time, we talked about, I retired from my, my first agency and got into the private sector and realized how much I missed the people that work in public safety because the mindset's different. Their motivations are different. And what an easy decision it was to come back when the opportunity presented itself.
Yeah. So if you're listening and you feel the calling, you should go to the website, check it out. If you're out of state listening, I believe Florida's still doing that thing where there's some extra money involved to get you here if you get hired. I think that's
there's state incentive bonus money available for out of state law enforcement, and we're actively recruiting people from out of the state who have those experiences, and we'd love to have them at the Clay County Sheriff's Office.
I have a friend in California I'm trying to convince to come here. But he now teaches driving, like high speed driving. So he's like, no, this is like he loves cars. So he's like, this is the greatest thing, teaching rookies how to drive fast. So
you can do that here.
I was going to say, you can tell them we teach driving here too.
So, but we're trying to get them there. So they hate everything else about California, but the job. So, well, great. All right. So we're going to talk about, did you start in patrol? What is your, what was kind of your?
I can kind of go through that if you'd like.
Yeah.
So just like everyone else, started in patrol, ended up in patrol, moved on to a field training officer, which I loved. Probably in total, I probably was a field training officer for probably about 6 years.
And what does a field training officer do? I know, but I want to.
Once you got your experience and you're kind of dialed in the patrol setting, you take on the new people coming on and train them to do the job as a solo officer. So I enjoyed that. I had some great people over the times that I did that. And during that time, I was also on various specialty teams. I was on crisis negotiations. I was on the honor guard. I moved on from there to community policing. Enjoyed that as well. Then I got the kind of itch for that detective type thing. Moved into general investigations. And then you move on to, obviously, promotions. And you're back in patrol as a sergeant. Task force like OSS, which we will probably talk about a little bit.
And what does that stand for the people?
That was Operation Safe Streets is what that stood for. And that was basically a proactive team out there just trying to, prevent and be that visible team out there and responding to any kind of serious situation as well. That was a fun time in my career. It really was. And then you get promoted. You go back to the road as a sergeant. And I've been blessed. I was a sergeant in patrol. I was a sergeant in general investigations, a sergeant in robbery homicide. Then I made lieutenant, went back to the road as a watch commander, was a lieutenant in narcotics. And then when Sheriff Cook came on, I went through that process of kind of interviews with her. And based on my resume and my career and what I've done, I was appointed to assistant chief, which was an honor. Yeah. So I've done a lot in the agency, and it's been a great career, it really has.
Well, great. So what exactly, now you're assistant chief of patrol.
Correct.
And does that mean that is there like a chief of patrol that does the north and south, or is there a chief of patrol in the north and a chief?
There's one chief that has kind of all of patrol, north and south. And then I cover any kind of, we can flex and cover north and south. Obviously people are off and stuff like that, but technically, I'm over the north end of the county, and anything that happens in the north end of the county, the lieutenants that are in the north, the sergeants, all the deputies that are in the north, and then my counterpart is Assistant Chief Clark. He has the south, same thing, and then Chief Alexander is over all of that.
Okay.
And then we have a director above us, and then the undersheriff and the sheriff.
And to set the stage here for somebody listening, if you started at the north of the county, let's go on Blanding Boulevard, and drove straight down Blanding Boulevard to the end of the county, what is that, hour? 45?
Maybe 43 miles. Yeah.
It depends on how fast you drive or the traffic.
Yeah, exactly.
If you get the construction, it might be hour and a half. But so it's a big county, and I think that's what people need to realize, that you have to split it up. In fact, that's still huge, even splitting it up, because
it sure is.
There's a lot going on there. So let's talk about what you do. And what does patrol do? I mean, obviously, you patrol. You go around there. What would be a normal day out for a patrol officer, and what would be a normal day for you?
A normal day for a patrol officer would be they're either assigned to day shift or night shift. So they're either coming out at 5:30 a.m. or they're coming out at 5:30 p.m. And you've got people that love each one. I've done them both. So they come out. They're usually once during what we will call their cycle, they report to a substation and kind of do a briefing, a pass on where their sergeants and lieutenants actually put eyes on them, pass on good information, do some sort of training sometimes during those briefings, and always good to do those. The other days, they pretty much go to work from their home. As soon as they get in that car, they get on that radio and they check that they're in service, and the madness begins, so to speak. They start getting assigned to a zone, and they start getting calls that are generated from within that area, and they're responding to those. Now, the times that they're not responding to those, they can be proactive. They can look for speeders, or they can, look for suspicious persons, or just be, mingling with the community and stuff. But those times are rare. The more shorthanded you get, the less time you have to do that, and you're going from call to call to call. So that's a patrol officer, but let me tell you something about a patrol officer. It's probably, when you get these new guys in patrol, they immediately, okay, what's the next step? That's one of the first things I tell them at our little kind of introduction. I say, looking back at my career, and you will think the same. You never get the exposure to the different things like you do in patrol. You just don't. You can go from a barking dog call to the most craziness you've ever seen. It's just that it's that diverse. In patrol, you're going to get exposure to everything. You're going to get the experience to the different calls. And looking back, you're going to say, you know what, I had the most fun and I learned the most in patrol. When you get in that investigations, sometimes it's day after day and them cases are stacking up on you. You're going to say, man, some of them patrol days were pretty fun. So patrol is, it's a good place. It's where you start learning what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. It's where you start to develop your writing skills and your investigative skills. And you really, I also tell them, I said, it's also one of the most important things. It's where you build your reputation. If you start off this job with, this is good enough, and yeah, that report reads pretty good, you're going to carry that. But if you are detail-oriented and you dive into the patrol setting and you're thorough and you really do the best you can do, cops in general are really good and bad about reputation. Sometimes we hold them a long time. But if you're that guy in patrol, when I'm in investigations and this report's been transferred to me and I'm like, man, this report is good. Who wrote this report? Oh, patrol officer Lendvay wrote it. Then when it's his time to come up, that reputation's already there. But it could be the flip side. So I always tell them from day one, put out the best product you can. And I hope that gets through to these guys. I really do. And girls.
Yeah, it's funny. I talked about the exact same thing when I was here with you a number of weeks ago. You start earning your reputation your first day on the street as a deputy, and everything that you do, from the way you interact with people, the way you interview people, the way you write. And, a lot of people don't realize it's not fun and exciting because you don't see it in the movies, but writing is an important skill. And everything that we do that's going to end up at the state attorney's office, in court, your writing is going to be scrutinized and judged. So, learning those base skills like Domenic just talked about is so key. And you can't overplay it. And really, patrol is the backbone of the agency. And those folks developing those skills is crucial for us.
Well, and I imagine, 99% of the time they're first there, because they're already on patrol.
Yep.
So, it's tough being the first there because you don't know what's going on. You're caught off guard. And, it's easier to go into a situation with information than it is when every time you're going on there, what could be nothing could be something. What appears to be something could be nothing. So you're constantly using your brain to analyze. We've talked about this many times of doing when I did the day with a deputy or day as a deputy. I can't remember the official name of it, but that they do scenarios like that. And one of the scenarios, I won't give it away, but in case I don't want to ruin it for somebody, but it escalated very quickly.
Sure.
And it was a situation that I would have, on a normal street day, you probably wouldn't have, a layman or woman would not have assumed it would escalate. And I'm sure that happens, unfortunately, quite a bit. And also, I know y'all can both probably attest to this, is sometimes emotions are higher, or adrenaline I'm talking about the person doing something. I mean, you see all the time somebody that 90% of their day is probably not that bad of a person, just do something really stupid because they got amped up. And that's tough because you're trying to also deal with that. What is I want to ask this before the break because we'll give a little tease here with some of the more fun questions. Let's get your story of what was the craziest thing in your career as patrol, whatever, that you were just like, this is now Sheriff. For those of you who've heard before in the past, Sheriff Cook had an incident when she was with JSO, Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, where she went into a diner and apparently this person was pelting people with feces, and that was her crazy. Wow. Yeah, no, it was a horrible story. I'm like OCD, so I'm like, you are way handling the retelling of it. I'd be like hand sanitizer out, and
that's probably pre-hand sanitizer days.
Yeah, she's pre-hazmat days too. Wow. Do you have any, or if you can think about it, we can talk about it after the break if you want.
I've got plenty of stories if you want.
Yeah, let's go. People love that stuff. That's my job to ask those questions.
What the craziest?
Yeah, what's the you can go with the craziest.
I guess the case is concluded. I can tell you a crazy. When they say the truth's what is stranger than fiction.
Yes.
Sometimes I can tell you a good narcotics story.
Sure.
So.
And this is when you were a detective in narcotics?
No, this is when I was actually the lieutenant over narcotics. So our guys, and I'm not going to get into names or locations or specifics, but I'll just tell you when someone tells you something and you're like, no, this didn't happen. And it really did. So we're doing narcotics work, so to speak, and we stop a guy and, he's probably what you would consider a lower level guy. So he's given an opportunity to either cooperate or he's got some stuff over his head pending, and he basically spills the beans, and he tells us this story that within the county at a residence, there's a large amount of narcotics buried in a yard, and on top of this is grass and 200-pound pit bulls on chains and dog houses. And we're like, yeah, okay, buddy. This is sounding really, really, really far-fetched. And he goes, no, man, I'm telling you, I can give you the exact location. So we'll fast forward like some weeks, and we do what we need to do to develop enough probable cause to, get search warrants and stuff. And it leads us to this property that he's talking about. And our first priority was those pit bulls had to be taken into custody by animal control, which they were. And we started, I don't know if you know what probing a yard is, but you see it in homicide and narcotics sometimes, where you just basically take steel rods and you just cover every foot of the yard. And sure enough, we got to an area.
You're looking for differences in the soil. When you put that rod through, if it's been recently dug or whatever, that rod will go through much easier than hard packed soil that's been there.
Yeah, so we're going where the dogs were, and all of a sudden, one of my guys is putting this rod through, and you hear dunk, dunk, dunk. And we're like, oh, my goodness.
He was telling the truth.
This guy's telling the truth. And the digging begins, and we end up pulling up some humongous Pelican, watertight, airtight cases. And probably now, looking back, I think it's the second largest bust we had in Clay, because these guys did a heck of a case this past year. But at that time, we pulled up, I think at that day was a great amount of drugs that we were able to get off the streets. And that was at a time when the ODs were really, really bad. And I think it was close to $300,000 or $500,000 was located that seen it. Well, all from a traffic stop where this guy's like, listen, I can give you this. And we're like, come on, that's far-fetched. But I got way better stories we'll get into later if you'd like to. But that's just a quick little narcotic story that was great. Great work from them guys. Led up to some big things federally with that case, and it was a great time in our career.
Oh wow! And again, if you're listening, Clay County is a very safe place. Just very, very, very safe place. Yeah. However, what is interesting about this area of Florida is we are because Jacksonville has two major. We have 95 and 10. I'm trying to set the scene here.
Yeah.
We have a huge coast. Clay County itself and a lot of Florida have a lot of very rural airstrips with dirt. Way back when I was a kid, there was some stuff going on in Clay County with the airstrips during the Pablo Escobar area and things like that. That's so I mean it's one of these areas where crime. If it wasn't for the vigilance of having a great policing force, it's ripe.
That's why we couldn't believe the story this guy was telling us. We're like, no, this is Clay County. This isn't some other town. But hey,
well, that's great. So we're going to take a quick break soon. I'm trying to say, any other questions you want to ask for our break before we can?
No, I think we're good on the break, and we got some good stuff afterwards.
Yeah. So you're listening to Never Off Duty. My job is to let you know to please subscribe if you're able to. That way it automatically goes to your phone. And you can go to I always post the link, or every couple of weeks I'll repost the link. You can go to any of these major services, Amazon, Apple Music, whatever, download it. You can also go to the Sheriff's website. If there's a player, if it's not up yet, it will be up soon. All the episodes are there. And tell your friends, whether you like it or not, you should tell your friends and get their opinion on it so you can debate it. You're listening to Never Off Duty. We are back to Never Off Duty. So we've got a lot to talk about this segment. We're gonna work in another story or two later on. We're gonna talk about the makeup of patrol for Clay County, at least in the north. And but one of the big topics we want to talk about is the Gateway to Clay. Is that
That's correct?
And that's a project you headed up. It's one of the sheriff's pet projects that she helped? If I'm understanding it correctly, like it was one of her. In partnership with a bunch of other people to bring, and it's a great thing that's going on. Tell us about it.
Well, Gateway to Clay it's not really the sheriff's project. It is, but it's a joint project, right. Like you said. It's the county, it's the sheriff's office, fire rescue has a hand in it as well, and it's the business owners along Wells Road. Let's talk about what Gateway to Clay is. So obviously, coming out of Duval County, we want people to know you're coming into Clay County. So the Gateway, we will call anything from the 2000 block of Wells Road, which is the west side of Blanding Boulevard, going down Wells Road into the city limits of Orange Park, and the city is also involved in this as well, down through what you would consider the dog track on 17. So that's what the Gateway to Clay consists of. What the mission was from all of us is just we want to improve appearances, reduce crime, find out from not only the business owners, but the people that live in that area. What is needed? What do you think the problems are? What do you think needs improvement? And it could be working with property owners as far as aesthetics with landscaping and, maybe the building needs painting. Then a law enforcement, what are the crime issues that you think are the problem here? And everyone putting their heads together on that and coming up with the plan moving forward to improve the area, make it look better, and just let people know you're now in Clay County.
Yeah, and really quickly, because I want to hit on this, we've talked about this before. There's a theory, and I don't think it's theory, I think it's true. Y'all might disagree, and please do if you don't, but there's a theory on law enforcement that the broken windows theory, that if you have broken windows, it's for some reason it attracts crime. But when the beautification keeps it away, and so it's fascinating. I mean, but it makes sense too. I mean, if you look at property values, things like that, people want to live in a prettier area. So if you take care of it, and there's been mayors throughout the United States that have done that to regions of their cities, and it's helped.
Yeah, Rudy Giuliani is
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up in the Northeast and I left in the 80s. And if you saw I grew up about 40 minutes from the Bronx. And if you saw what the Bronx looked like in the 80s compared to what it looked after Rudy Giuliani, it was, that very theory. But so one of the first things we did is we put a drone up. We actually flew that Wells Road corridor because we want to be able to show the improvements this project has made. And then right after the drone, we did a walk of every entire business on Wells Road. Told them what the plan was with Gateway to Clay, got their buy-in, and they were awesome. A lot of these business owners are like, we're in, whatever you need from us, we're in. And then we started with this statistical just gathering of what are the issues up here. And then from the law enforcement standpoint, we had our mission right off the bat, and we ran with it. Then the county had their own issues. Medians need cut, or these trees need trimming. Fire rescue was working on some paramedicine stuff with stuff like that. And we dove right in with handling, issues that people said they had and businesses said they had. And it's a good thing. It really is.
Yeah, the broken windows theory that you touched on, I think it does prove true. Criminals are drawn to areas where they think people are not paying attention. So that's why you don't see criminals typically in a nice area. They may come in to try to do some auto burglaries or something like that, but they're not going to spend time because they know people are watching. So when you have an area where things look overgrown, they're not painted, you have some vacant buildings, maybe something's boarded up, it makes them feel like nobody's really paying attention to that area, and they can get comfortable. So we don't want them to be able to get comfortable. So the initiative that Dominic's undertaken with his folks has been huge. And I know the sheriff has been out with them as well. And part of this is community walks, and it's actually going door to door and talking to the business owners and the residents in that area and working with them and our private sector and our government sector partners to really get rid of any kind of impression that maybe this is an area where criminals could get comfortable.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it was a lot of what we were fighting, honestly, was perception. And businesses jumped right in. I'll give you an example, like Hanania Group. Just something as simple as they had a body shop on Wells Road. So people are bringing their cars that are damaged, and they just would store them in the front area waiting to be worked on. And just talking with them, they were like, you know what? It doesn't look good that all these crashed cars are up front. We're going to move them to the back. We're going to paint. And just everyone's bought in. So the sheriff's office...
That's great, by the way. That's
it's
really
great.
awesome.
Just little things like that. The sheriff's office, right off the bat, we started addressing some issues of homelessness, some panhandling, various repeated crimes, like businesses that had numerous petty thefts. Could we go in there? Could we educate them on where they have their product located or their merchandise, and little tips that can help reduce crime to bring those numbers down? Violent crime was a perception we were fighting. There really was not a violent crime issue in the Gateway to Clay. And in 2022, I always brag about this stat, but it's worth bragging about. We reduced violent crime in Wells Road by 40%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And the way we did a lot of this stuff I'm talking about was, in addition to the patrol resources we had up there, we offered 3 special details throughout the year, holiday season, spring break, where deputies on their off time could come get a little bit of overtime and be totally proactive and handle some of these problems. The great thing about that is you can't sustain that. You can't keep paying overtime to people to do that. But we were able to implement this year what's called the task force, which is a permanent team of 7 people that is devoted not just to Wells Road, but the entire county. However, that's the regular hours. So that keeps it going, where we're not doing these special details, where we got a team out there that can do these things on a regular basis.
Well, that's great. And have, as a resident here, and I've seen a lot in that area, and you see this at every city. There's a certain area of Jacksonville where it used to be nice, and then crime kind of took over. I mean, you see this everywhere. This is every city in America, and if you let it set, it's like seeding ground in a war. It's going to spread again. So you have to, and that's not to say crime doesn't happen everywhere. Crime happens everywhere, people. Let's just be real. But the hot areas. You can't let it set. You gotta, like you said, you gotta push it. I mean, you gotta have a presence there. You gotta clean it up, and it's the perception, because remember, criminals are predators, and most predators in the animal kingdom are opportunists. So if you give them a territory or an area that it looks like an easy opportunity, they're going to take that over a less easier. I mean, it's kind of we've talked about this with car theft.
Yeah, unlock cars.
If yours is easier to break into, that's what a criminal's probably statistically going to do versus one that's harder. Or my favorite is we have an alligator farm in St. Augustine. The joke there is you don't have to be faster than the alligator, just the person next to you. So if you're faster, you don't have to worry about it. So it's the way that predators are.
Yeah, it's simple psychology. It's risk and reward for them too. So if they can go through a parking lot and there's 10 cars in there and 2 of them are unlocked and 8 of them are locked, guess which 2 are going to get burglarized?
Right.
Unless somebody with a locked car has left something of major value out in the open that they can see.
Yep.
Then the risk-reward
Exactly.
thing shifts a little bit, and then it's worth the risk to actually take the time to break a window and get in there and get it. So it's the little things that people can do to really reduce their opportunities to be a victim of a crime.
Now, are they still doing, because I've been by Orange Park Mall, but I haven't been in there in a while. Are they still doing the towers that have I think it's the sheriff. Is that the sheriff's department?
No.
Or that's their private?
No, they don't do the towers anymore like we used to. The mall, the weird thing about the mall is if people knew how much the mall puts into security, they would be shocked. But the mall doesn't talk about it. They just don't talk about it much. But they do. They are the mall and the management there. I work with I joke sometimes and say I'm the assistant chief of the Orange Park Mall. It's a joke, but I devote a lot of time to the mall because the mall could make or break that Gateway to Clay area. It really can. So I am weekly talking to Randy and Reed up there at the mall, and they're on board. They support the sheriff's office. They fight their own battles, but we work hand in hand. They take security pretty seriously, and obviously they have a business to run, and they want it to be a safe environment. And
there's a lot of great, check it out if you haven't been in a while. Yeah. I was there at Christmas, so I haven't been there that long ago. Wasn't there? Or maybe a movie. But it's worth, if you haven't been in a while, remember it's a major source of jobs and great things for our community. So do check it out. Don't be afraid. I think the problem is sometimes the news, as we know, might report something that's not entirely accurate, and then they amend it later when they get the accurate information, but nobody reads the amended article. And again, that only can happen once every couple of years, and that perception stays. Especially,
we usually have about 2 incidents. We haven't had any violent incidents other than maybe some simple battery, but we usually have about 2 incidents a year that kind of that perception affects the entire year up there. So we devote a lot of time though to making that area as safe as can be. And that task force I talked about, another exciting thing about that is every one of them is going to be on a bike.
Oh, wow.
At some point, yeah. So we placed an order for all of them to be fitted with police bikes. They're actually at our county business open road bicycles on 220. They're all being outfitted as we speak.
Are they normal bikes, electric bikes?
No, they're normal bikes. I didn't want to
make it easy
them too much with them electric bikes, so they're going to be pedaling.
Right. Although I'm always fascinated by technology, but it is amazing. Like, I mean, some of these electric bikes get up to like 45 miles per hour.
I don't need them on pursuits down Blanding Boulevard on an e-bike.
Suddenly the speeder's like, how did this bike catch up to me?
Some of them guys and girls on that team are they're pretty go-getters, and I can see them doing that. So this is a pedal bike.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, that's great. So let's talk about the makeup of patrol.
Okay.
It's kind of, so you're a citizen in Clay County. You're like, okay, I'm kind of curious. How many people do we got? How's that work?
So obviously, as we said, the sheriff is top, of course, and then the undersheriff below that. Then we have a director, and then below the director is the chief of patrol. Then you have myself in the north, my counterpart, Assistant Chief Clark, in the south, and then you have the north and south each have 4 lieutenants. Those are watch commanders. So they're kind of the daily boss, so to speak. And they are over 3 sergeants, 1 sergeant. Some of them have 4, 1 in one area, another area, and then below the sergeants are the patrol deputies. And that can range based on the area they're in to, 8 deputies under a sergeant or 7 or up to 10. It's all based on calls for service, what is needed in the area you're at. And we take a lot of stock in that. We don't want to put too many people in one area when these people, for officer safety reasons, are just, they're spread out too thin. We also have to think about geographical things. Up around the mall that something goes down, I can have a lot of officers there probably in 3 minutes. But let's talk about somebody like in Assistant Chief Clark's area down in Keystone. If I've only got 2 guys there and one of them's in Keystone and one of them's way up, 20 miles away or something, that's not good. So we take a lot of stock into that too. A lot goes into where we put our resources and how they're utilized. That basically what makes up patrol is that your patrol officers, then your sergeants are over them, and then your watch commanders over them, and then it comes to me.
Probably the biggest difference between the North and the South is population density. So the area that Domenic has is where you have people kind of really packed in, living in close quarters, where in the southern end of the county that Assistant Chief Clark has, it's a little more spread out.
Yeah, exactly. If you look at it from a map almost, you'd be like, man, Assistant Chief Paniccia's got it easy. Because if you look at it from a map, it's like I got this, like it looks like the size of a quarter on the map of the area I'm over. But then Assistant Chief Clark has the rest of the county, and you're like, but when you pull the calls for service, they're almost identical. It's pretty crazy how
it's all about that population density.
Yep, it sure is.
And different. I imagine if you were to put it in a book, and y'all probably do have a book. I shouldn't even say that you don't. I'm sure there's all sorts of I know there's all sorts of analysis going on to try to figure things out. But I suspect on average, different kinds of calls. Now, I'm sure you all have you get rid of the normal ones that happen anywhere in law enforcement, but I mean, I joke about the hogs all the time because it fascinates me. Oh, go ahead.
I got one for you. No, I don't want to cut you off.
Oh, no. That's I was just saying that very different kinds of calls.
Very different. I'm going to go back probably about 15 years. And I was raised in the North. I was raised in a very urban environment. So farm animals and stuff are just, new to me. So I'm working for the sheriff's office, and I'm in the north end of the county, and I'm a young deputy, and I do a boneheaded thing. I really do. So back in the day, nothing crazy, just my mouth got the best of me. We'll leave it at that. So back in the day, so to speak, punishment would be, we'll send you to Keystone. And it's because of that. Keystone was it's almost like you were out in your own little world, out there, and it was a new environment for me. So the story goes that my first day I'm assigned to Keystone, and I'm just, I'm shaking my head like, man, I can't believe they did this to me. So I'm driving to Keystone, and we're in the north end of the county in patrol. Maybe your first call might be, someone acting this way or that way, some good, exciting stuff. And I remember the call came over the radio to me, and it said it was a noise complaint in reference to roosters. And I remember just like looking at myself in the rearview mirror and saying, "Is this what your life has become?" It was just. I mean, you want to talk about a way to discipline someone? I mean, that was it. I'm like, I'm going to a rooster call. How do you even handle that? And it's very diverse calls. I mean, and that's one thing. When I got to pick North or South when I got appointed, and I was like, I want the North, and people were like, you're crazy, you want the North? I'm like, yeah, I want the North, because usually the South is something that's we have some forests in the South too, and sometimes people take wrong turns and they get lost, and there's a lot of long-term kind of like off the wall sometimes calls in the South, where the North, I'll say it's more of your routine type of police work. It really is, but I got to cover the South sometimes too.
Well, and having grown up here, I live in the South. I grew up in the South. I grew up when Fleming Island was not a nice area to. I mean, it was the sticks. Green Cove didn't. We were part of Green Cove. Green Cove didn't want it because it was a tax burden, and then Orange Park didn't want it because they didn't want the tax burden. So it's just funny that now everybody's going, man, we should have kept that. That would have, because it's one of the more valuable pieces of land in Florida, actually. So. Of course, I live in Green Cove now, and we've got our own stuff. But I love, and I'm fortunate to have a place down in Putnam County in the Ocala forest, and I spent a great deal of time like there. And again, completely different things happening in the more rural areas, which I think we take as a, that live here. I say that living in a where I do in this area, Gringo, but it's a badge of honor, like the fun stuff that happens, like the rooster calls or the, so don't,
calls.
So when you're,
my first snake call was pretty good too.
So speaking of snakes, I was going to ask this because you were in narcotics, and you can chime in too if you've got this. I was talking to the Undersheriff. I'm pointing like you can see when you're listening.
I do the same.
So we were talking about narcotics. So this was Sheriff Cook and I, and Deputy Ford was here, and I was saying that in movies, she did a call with a snake. And I said, well, were the drugs hidden under the snake? Because that's in movies what they do. They put it. So have you all ever had that happen?
No, my best. I'm just telling stories today. I'm dominating the conversation.
You're good at it.
No, it's good. You're here. We don't get you off.
My best. I've got a couple snake stories, but my best snake story was probably, I don't even know. It's probably pushing 20 years. But this lady called me. She was mowing her grass. I got the call. It's a snake call. And when I get to the call, it was on Russell Road. And she had a cardboard box over the top of a snake. And the mower was there, and she was obviously like very distraught. And I looked at her, I had to assess what we're dealing with here. So I said, what do we got? And she goes, a gardener snake. It's probably only about 9 inches to a foot long, but I don't do snakes. You've got to do something with this snake. So I'm like, 9-inch gardener snake. I got this, right? So I walk over there nonchalant, and I kick this box over, and about a 2.5 foot, 4-inch in circumference cottonmouth strikes at my face to where I'm about to do a backflip.
You're lucky.
And I'm like, what are you talking about? This woman's like, oh, it's a little bit bigger than I thought. I mean, that's one of my snake stories.
Nope. Don't like that at all.
No, don't like that at all.
I mean, look, I recognize that snakes are part, they keep plagues down. Great. They get rats. They do wonderful things. I still don't like them.
No.
I have an app called Snake App, and it identifies snakes. It's pretty cool. You just take a picture of me. I know what most of them are around here.
So you take a picture and it automatically identifies it for you?
It sends off to a real person that like looks at it and then sends you, or probably in this day and age, it's probably actually artificial intelligence doing it.
Probably, yeah.
But it's pretty cool. It's a cool thing, but I enjoy doing that.
ID.
Yeah.
Be good on the fish ID.
Oh yeah, do they have an app for that? We're gonna talk fishing. We got to do that before we close off here. Do they have that for fishing where you can?
I don't know of one where you take a picture and it automatically tells you what it is. There's many apps that'll give you either pictures or drawings, representations, and you kind of have to figure it out from there.
I'm seeing a business opportunity.
Yeah, that actually would be a great one.
Pops up
I like it.
Especially like
and everything.
I'm not a great fisherman, but I sometimes catch stuff and I'm like, what is this? Like I'm just gonna call it a brim. Like that's.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but it looks like it could be. So it always amazes. And the ocean's huge. I mean, always. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna go off on a little tangent, listeners, but I'm gonna but just to talk about fishing, and then we'll come back to this because I want to talk about snakes. But no, I mean, my sister's a diver. She was diving off of Jacksonville and saw a tigerfish, and this was back when. They're invasive species, and they ask you to hunt them down in Florida.
Lionfish.
Lionfish. Thank you. Yep. Sorry, that was right. And this was way long ago, and they didn't believe her. They're like, she's a marine biologist, so she's like, I'm not an idiot. I know what it is.
This is kind of my field. The
irony being, had they started the program back then when she first reported it, they might have actually been able to do something about it. Now they're everywhere. But that's the thing is like a fish that might not be native to this can just show up. Weird stuff happens.
You know what? They've learned that those lionfish are a delicacy now.
That's right.
They really have, and they have in tournaments as well. They have as many lionfish as you can get, and
I think the FWC has a couple of different rodeos or roundups where they pay you a bounty by the lionfish for however many you can bring in.
I love living in Florida because my friends that don't are always amazed by the stuff. Like, like there'll be some new bug and they'll be like, kill it. And everybody's like, really? You're supposed to? Yes, it's invasive. Like, it's our job to take that thing out. Now, snake story. My takeaway from this is I can call you if there's a snake.
You can call me. I'll send someone right over.
I do think that we'll do a future episode about this because we keep teasing that we're going to talk about some of the things that it is amazing what y'all do. I see Deputy Ford all the time because I recognize his car. Like, so I see hazard lights and I'm like, I'll be driving down the road. I'll see somebody that's broken down. I'm like, I wonder how long till a deputy, because I'm on the other side or taking the kids to school. And they, I'm not saying I would stop. I wouldn't point that out because, somebody's going to be like, that guy's a jerk. He wouldn't stop. But like the other day, I'm driving down the road and I'm like, I saw hazard lights go on. And within like 30 seconds, flashing blue, it was actually Deputy Ford again. I've seen him twice now in the last like month helping somebody that, had a car issue. But y'all do that. I mean, it's, I actually would venture to say it's probably, maybe it is in the handbook, like you have to, but I don't think so. I think most would just do it anyways as public service.
I think so. I think you're absolutely right.
And I think there's calls where, quite frankly, that it's kind of, I hate to say waste your time because it's never a waste of your time because you're helping the community, but there's probably priorities, but yet you go out of the way to do it because somebody asked for help. And I think that's really cool that we live in this community that does that.
Yeah. I think there was a time probably back in the 90s where it was you will, but I don't think they even had to say you will. But now it's just they do, It's not someone telling you have to. And, there's something to be said when it's 98 degrees and they're out there in that ballistic vest out there changing that tire. It's on the side of the road.
Yeah, that's not easy.
It sounds like a simple thing, but it's, that could ruin your whole day. Now you're soaked and wet and you're back in that car and back in the heat. It's...
And I haven't just seen patrol do it. I've seen because I recognize a lot of the force and I'm always like,
sure.
A great example out of Jacksonville, Sheriff Rutherford. I've seen when he was sheriff do it and I'm sure our sheriff would too. So,
sure.
Yeah, she does. She's not uncommon on the radio and I'm not surprised to hear that about, PIO Andrew Ford either. He's that kind of guy. Other than being an Eagles fan, he's a pretty good guy.
Other than an Eagles fan thing, he's
that's his one downfall. Nobody's perfect.
Yeah, you're right.
So before we go into some of the fishing stuff that we that I said I would do, because I know there's probably like 20 listeners now. They're like, yeah, please get back to that. That's what I want to listen to. Let's finish off patrol. So
yep.
Let's do a typical day for you.
Wow.
And then we're going to let's talk about the needs of patrol because we're a very growing county.
Okay. A typical day for me is, I hate to say it's very meeting based. It's
leadership. Unfortunately, I wish more people understood that. People are like, oh, it's so easy being a leader. No, you sit in meetings all day. Like that's the worst.
So what I usually do is I show up at an office environment and that starts with, reading stuff that occurred from the midnight shift before, because obviously I'm sleeping, but I want to know what occurred during the night. That's called a debrief. So I'll go through any significant calls for service that they responded to during the night. I'll go through some emails addressing any personnel issues that we had during the night, and then I'll start diving into my daily day. Now, because I'm still in an office setting, I still am constantly monitoring what's occurring in my area and countywide. So I could be sitting at the office, dived into office work, but hear that serious situation go out and know I've got people that can handle it, but I'm going anyway to be that kind of backup, so to speak, if needed by my watch commander. So other than that, I'm going to meetings. I might have a meeting at the mall. I might have a meeting with a certain business. We might have sheriff's office internal meetings. I might be doing new hire interviews. Myself and Assistant Chief Clark, we do all of those.
Oh, cool.
We want to know who we're bringing to patrol. So either me or him sit on every one of those new hire interviews to see what we're...
And if they're a new hire interview, they've already gone through academy, is that, or is it...
Not all the time.
Okay.
Not all the time. But most of the time, yes. So I do that. I do... sometimes I just can't sit in that office and I get out and ride my area. I want to see what the issues are. Pull up, cause that new deputy a lot of stress when the chief pulls up next to him.
Now, are you in a marked car?
I'm in an unmarked car, but it's very policey, so to speak. It's a white Explorer with a push bumper and a spotlight.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
you can tell. And because me and the other chief are the only one that have one, everyone knows So that's my day. I mean, my day can change. I mean, I can have this plan for the day, but like I said, it's my day is based on what happens out there on the road. It really is. And a major incident, I'm going to go. But that's my day.
And then you
I'm
also
on call. I'm on call every other week. So what that entails is when I'm off, I'm still available to respond to any major incident. And then myself and AC Clark, we rotate that. So every other week I'm on call as well when I'm not working.
Right. Which is, a lot of this I repeat, but some people don't hear everything. It's a very tough thing being on call. It's because you just mentally,
you can't check out.
You can't check out. Yeah, you never can check out. And quite frankly, the higher you move up, even if you're off, you're not really off. Because they could still, you're never off. I
think she probably doesn't know this, but I'll share this. I think the first 2 years of my assistant chief, the sheriff. And she's the sheriff. She can do what she wants to do. Let's be clear. But she doesn't need to take the time to say, you know what, that's AC Clark's area and this is AC Paniccia's area. So for about 2 years, I'd get calls from her saying, hey, I've got an issue out there in Fleming Island with the da-da-da-da-da. And I'd be like, yes, ma'am, I'm on it. And then I'd handle it. And then finally, after like a year and a half, I think my chief was talking to her one time and she told me something about a Fleming Island. And he goes, hey, you know that's Jeremy's area, right? And she goes, I've been giving him stuff for a year and a half in that area. He never said a thing. I said, no, I'm not going to say a thing. I just get it done. But we're never off. You're right. And that's where, when we get into the hobby thing, that's why that is a must. I also talk to all the new guys about that. You have got, because when you start this job, you can be that guy to where on duty, off duty, you are living, breathing, eating, so to speak, this job. You're talking about everything you did with your wife and your kids, and you're living it. And there's been even circumstances where guys are listening to the radio when they're off. And I am a guy that I will tell you, give 100% at the job, but you better give 100% off the job as well. And I try to tell them, get that out right from the get-go. Don't be that guy or girl from the start where you're just consumed by this type of work.
That is very good advice. I'm sure that is the hardest.
Yeah.
How to separate that. Well, that's people that make it and don't, quite honestly, in fields where you're always on call. It's finding that separation and that. So we'll go into that in about 5 seconds, unless you have anything else you want to talk about law enforcement or.
I do want to talk about. We touched on resources needed.
Oh yeah, that's a great.
So we're always going to need resources. Are we better today than we were before Sheriff Cook? We absolutely are. My personal opinion, and a lot of people's opinion, it's due to the work she's done, the relationship she's had with the county commissioners, with the residents, with everyone, with getting that career compensation plan in place where we could not only hire deputies but retain them. Mm-hmm. And it's been huge. So it's way better now than it was, but we still lose people. Some people realize this job's not for them, and I don't hold that against anyone. If you think this job's not for you, then by all means you need to do something else. We're way better than we were, but we still need people, especially in patrol.
And I would tell, if you are thinking about it, now's the time to do it, because they won't always, it ebbs and flows, the need. Sometimes it gets less. Right now, I think most departments in Florida are really trying to hire. Because everybody's trying to hire. I'm trying to hire in my business. So every company you hear, they're trying to hire. That will change. That never stays like it is. And strike while the iron's hot. Because I hate to say this, you might not test well. So maybe but you might be the best person in the world. And that we've talked about, that's true in any industry. You might not test well, so you might have been weeded out when competition is the most fierce, but you might be the best person for the job. So this is your opportunity. Don't hesitate.
Yeah, hiring's cyclical, and kind of like Domenic talked about, and I mentioned a few weeks ago when you and I spoke. When I came out too from college with a degree, and I was even a valedictorian in my academy class, I couldn't get a job right away. It took me a year to get a job even after that. So this is an opportunity right now where you don't have to have those kind of weights. You don't necessarily have to have your college degree lined up before you get that job. But it's cyclical. You're right. that tide will turn, the pendulum will swing, and it'll be different at some point in time. But this is a great time to come on. For those that haven't been through the academy, yes, we do sponsorships as well for people that need to go through the academy. It's a competitive process, but we're always looking for good candidates for either those that have already been through the academy, those that haven't, or those that have law enforcement experience or are working right now at another law enforcement agency that want to relocate. We're happy to take them all.
That's great.
Yeah, we saw a lot of that in this last class that I met. There was a lot of officers from big cities. I think we had 3 from NYPD.
Oh, wow.
And, I love NYPD. I'm not putting them down. They're a major agency. But these guys said that they wanted to work. They did their research. They really did. But they relocated their whole families down here, and they moved down here. And they said they cannot believe what it would be like to work in a community that backs them.
Yes.
And that's huge. When you hear them say that, we take a lot of that for granted. How much the community loves the sheriff's office. And then some of them bigger agencies or cities, they're just not feeling that. And they're kind of in shock when they go out there on the road. And it's a good thing. So we've got people relocating from all over the country.
Yeah, and I think that we are blessed. This community is amazing for its support. I'm not in law enforcement, obviously, but I see it, and it's really cool. And I think, given what's happening all over the nation that we see in the news, with a lot of communities unfortunately turning on law enforcement, I can see that getting to you. I mean, I hope people listening to this outside in these other cities. That's why this outreach is great, and this ability to talk long form, so that you can see it's an ally. Law enforcement is your ally, and it's bringing a lot to your community. And don't judge one incident that, frankly, in my opinion, are very isolated given the amount of population in America. Don't judge that. Don't destroy something beautiful because of one weed. So so I hope that and it will change. I mean, look, it will change, and you're seeing that as some of the cities that were like, we're getting rid of departments altogether. They tried it for like a day, and they're like, no, this is a bad idea. Right.
Yeah, they're learning the hard way. Unfortunately, that those policies they've failed.
Yeah. So now's your time. Apply. Great. Anything else anything you want to hit on?
I think we're good.
Yeah. So again, thank you for listening. We're not cutting yet though, because I promised some fishing. We talked about it now. Now, I saw a picture. So you're a kayak fisherman too?
Well, I am
remember, let me set the stage here. Find an outlet. You should do that anyways.
Yeah,
it's good for your health.
I am a boat and kayak fisherman.
Okay. Do you have a boat, or do you okay, what type of boat do you have?
I have a 2021 Sportsman Masters bay boat. Great boat that sits there and hardly ever gets used because I love the kayak so much. But yeah. So the fishing thing, I probably started that with, you want to dive into it now?
Yeah, let's do it. We're done. Everybody, if you don't want to hear about fishing, tune in next week. We'll have more. But we're going to talk fishing. And I joke that y'all two should start a fishing podcast, because you'd probably would get more, I hate to say it, but little specific things for podcasts tend to do better. People like the diehards are like, nope, I care about law enforcement fishing. That's all I care about.
It might be an untouched niche. We should maybe think about that. But you do a fantastic job at this one.
Well, thank you.
Do. So my fishing, where I got this passion, so to speak. So grew up where I grew up with no...
In the Bronx, right? Or is that
I grew up in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Oh, Bridgeport,
Connecticut.
About
45 minutes.
Suddenly your street cred just went down. No, I'm just kidding.
Actually, it's probably rougher than the Bronx, but we won't go there.
But you hear Connecticut, and you're thinking,
you hear Greenwich. You hear Greenwich where you drive. You don't want to go to Bridgeport, but nothing if Bridgeport listeners are listening. But so I didn't grow up fishing. So this sounds crazy to you, but the only fishing I saw growing up was kids fishing in sewer grates.
Okay. No, that's
for real. And they would catch eels. And I'd be like, wow, that's crazy. So when I came to Florida...
Did they eat them?
No, I hope not.
I know. Sadly, I could see a kid.
But no opportunity to fish, so never even knew that this would turn into this passion. So I come down to Florida as a teenager, and one of my best friends' father was a pastor of the church. But when he wasn't the pastor of the church, he was a commercial fisherman out of Cortez, Florida.
That's like the most Florida thing you could have ever said.
Exactly.
He's a pastor and commercial fisherman.
It is. So he was a commercial fisherman out of Cortez, Florida, and he would do that from Sunday evening when the last service ended till probably Friday. So his son, one of my best friends, was his guy, and they would commercial inshore net fish. And not to get political, but this is like before the gill net bans. So I'm talking probably
Sorry, I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about. So we're talking probably 1986, 87. So my friend says, hey, my dad needs some help on the boat. You want to go? And I'm like, man, I've never even been on a boat. Yeah, I'm in. So we'd go down Sunday night and check into, they had a house in Cortez, and I get on this boat the next day and we start doing this commercial fishing. And we were catching things like, I hate to say this now because I'm such a conservative type for the species.
Right.
We were catching redfish. We were catching trout. We were catching sheepshead. We were catching snook that we had to release. They were not allowed. And it was usually net fishing in like 5 to 6 foot of water. And then in the winter months, it was mullet fishing. So I started getting... like, man, and I'd see people on boats with rod and reels, and these guys were like, those are rod and reelers, man. You don't know. That's terrible. You don't do that. And it started. So then I probably, from there, got this, like, joy of fishing. I want to fish. I did that for a little while. And then I probably did what most people do. I started out shore fishing, beach fishing. And I got pretty serious with that. I was like the beach fisherman, you know. I had all the rigs and the setup on the back of my Jeep and truck, and I did that for a while, and then had that, I got to get out on a boat, get out on a kayak. And then there's a guy here that I really will give all the credit for that got me into it, and it's Lieutenant Tony Hall. He was big into fishing back probably about 15 years ago, and any chance I got to go on his boat, I would go. And it turned me, everyone says I'm a little bit of a lunatic with it. When I got so passionate about it, I got a little crazy. So I'd go out on Tony Hall's boat, and, you know, we'd take like a weekday and go, and we'd have a couple guys with us, and we'd be fishing from like, 6 a.m. till noon. And Tony'd look over at me and he'd say, hey, let's go get some chicken wings or get a burger or something. And I would look at him with such disgust. I'd say, what are you talking about? I said, we're out here fishing. We can eat wings any day of the week. I'm not eating. We're out here to fish. And he's like, this guy's a lunatic. And it happened in the Keys one time with Tony Hall too. We got a little inshore charter, and our guide was taking us out there to these islands catching bonefish and stuff. And the guide at one time, we were about to head in, the 4 hours was up, and he goes, hey, you guys want to try something real quick? And I'm like, yeah, what do you got? He's like, we're going to throw these giant 6-8-inch lures to these islands, and you're going to reel in these 100-pound barracuda. He goes, but you're only going to do it once because it's an unbelievable fight. So I threw it out there one time, reel as fast as you can, 100-pound barracuda hits it, and the fight's on. And I fight this thing, and he takes it off, and he sees me throw it out there again. He goes, what are you doing? I go, I got to do it again. So about an hour later, I look up at the front of this boat, and Tony Hall's laying there asleep, and the guide's laying next to him. And the guide looks over at Tony Hall, and he goes, hey. And Tony goes, what? He goes, this guy's got a serious problem. And Tony goes, you don't know the half of it. So that turned into me getting my own boat. And for probably 7-8 years, strictly boat fishing, inshore. And then I got the bug. What's ironic is right before Sheriff Cook and the Undersheriff came here, probably about 8 months prior to that, I got my first kayak. Never been on a kayak, never kayak fished, and went crazy and bought the greatest thing there was. Never even been on a kayak, and I knew I would. I was hooked, and that led to another kayak, and now I kind of rotate kayak or boat depending on what I want to do.
I enjoy kayak. If you've never done it, you should try it. It's really cool because you can go. One, it's neat not to have the noise. I mean, to me, when you're out there on the ocean or the rivers or whatever, it's I like being part of nature. I mean, that's just me. Look, Some people
Yeah.
like music, not very conducive to fishing, but I guess it depends on where you are. If you're probably in the ocean, it wouldn't matter. But
No, I turn music off, believe it or not, when I'm fishing.
Yeah,
They're
I
Come
can't.
on, man, put a little music on. I turn it
Yeah.
way down, if at all.
yeah, I can't. I don't like it
The
myself.
sound waves travel through the water. The fish
Yeah,
do hear
they
it.
do.
They feel it.
Vibrations, the bass especially.
But kayaking is pretty cool. I have a kayak, but I don't fish off of it because I would flip. I mean, I've talked about this. Have you ever flipped your kayak?
Never flipped my kayak, but I have a kayak, and so does the Undersheriff. I have one of my kayaks is 37 inches wide, which is wider than a standard door.
Right.
And the other one is 34 inches wide. And you watch these videos all the time of these guys standing up and casting. I'm not that guy. I don't stand on it. I don't want to flip it. But you're right about being in nature. Just last week I was fishing, and it's in one of my videos. I'm fishing and I look up.
Oh, videos? Or you have you do a channel or something?
I look up.
Do you want to plug it, or do you not want to? It's okay if you don't want to.
It's up to you.
Yeah, plug it if you don't mind.
So it's True Love and Fishing.
Oh, cool.
It's TRULUVIN Fishing on YouTube. I look up at 12 o'clock and there's a bald eagle looking at me. And I'm fishing, awesome. And it's on video. And at one point he swoops down and I catch him, and I hope he's going to dive, and he is, and he dives down for a fish. He misses it, but he comes back around. I mean, there might be an alligator to your right. I mean, it's really cool doing the kayak thing.
Yeah, and again, it's like you say, you come up on a boat, they hear the motor. That's the thing. That's you scare a lot away that you don't get to see when you're in a kayak.
It's kind of hard to pitch my fishing here because it's kind of like how can I put this? It's kind of like the Clay High quarterback trying to talk about how great he is at fishing when he's sitting next to Tom Brady. Kayak fishing, So the Undersheriff's been kayak fishing for 25 years.
20-some years, yeah.
20-some years. I've only been kayak fishing for about 3 to 4. It was boat before that, but I'm learning. I'm learning a lot every time I go.
If you say, because a lot of people do this, they're like, I don't like fishing. It's because you've never caught. I think it's when you've had one good experience, and sometimes you get lucky, and it's your first one, and I think that's the people that get
it's like
hooked.
Golf,
yeah,
that one shot.
That you're hooked. I mean, it's I still enjoy going. Well, I enjoy just cane pole fishing off a dock still. I mean, that's what I grew up doing. So it's I've never gotten too big into saltwater fishing because that's like a big commitment.
Not really.
It's not in the kayak. It's not.
It's not.
Okay.
You should do it.
I'll have to try it out
Come
again.
out one time. We'll take you out.
Yeah.
Before we cut, what's your greatest catch? Both of you get to go
in the kayak,
or anywhere. I mean, you can do both. If there's a better one that you gotta tell us. Like, I caught a great white one.
No, I usually stick to the marshes and the creeks and the rivers, mostly the salty stuff. I've gotten a 29-inch trout, and probably my biggest red from the kayak is probably 32 inches. I have caught a 38-incher, but that was from a boat.
Yeah.
Now, where do you on a kayak? I mean, that's a big fish to be putting on a kayak. Is it? What do you have like a? I mean, what do you do?
We don't keep most of our fish.
Okay.
Especially something that big.
Yeah.
Would be over the limit.
Yeah, I participate.
I didn't know what it was. That's why I was like.
Both of us participate in a conservation program, especially for the trout. It's release over 20. So those trout over 20 inches, although it's legal to keep one, really are the breeders for the species. So I try to keep them healthy. If I keep a trout, it's going to be something in that 18-inch range. That's about perfect for filleting size and all that. But I have a cooler on my boat. I can fit an 18-inch fish in there with no problem, or a larger redfish. I will keep a redfish from time to time. And they'll keep with no problem whatsoever. So you can keep them when you need to, but it's mostly catch and release for me. It's mostly, I'm just kind of filling up my my energy from the outdoors.
Yep.
It's kind of recharging my battery for the next week is kind of what I do on the weekends.
Yeah. And what about you? What's your?
So probably from a boat standpoint, I'd say recently probably like a 42-inch redfish. And then about a month ago, I got my personal best snook down in Crystal River on light tackle, which is also on video. It's an incredible. If you haven't experienced a 33-inch snook on a 3000 series reel with light tackle, it's just amazing. On the kayak, I got to say one of the best fights on the kayak, you were actually there, and that was that 36-inch black drum.
Yeah.
We were trolling some soft plastics, and I thought I got hung. And I was like, I'm hung here, and the Undersheriff was next to me, and then all of a sudden I felt it move. And then it was one of my first times in that area, and the undersheriff goes, "Be careful." And I'm like, "What's up?" And he goes, "There's some pretty good gators in here, and I think you got a gator." That's how heavy this was on the line. You don't want to be pulling up a gator. But then it ran on me, and I'm like, "This ain't no gator. This is something." And I reeled in that 36-inch black drum on that light tackle on that kayak, and it was like a kayak was spinning like a little torpedo through the water. It was pretty good.
And I think that is kind of the appeal of a kayak, is it's more of, all the appeal of the quietness and all that and being able to go places you can't, that's cool. But I do think it's more of a fight too, because of that. You're not, a boat, you got some weight behind you to keep.
It's a leverage. It's different. It's just like leverage getting, it's a learning curve. It is.
Well,
it's a very personal experience with nature in a kayak, because you're 6 or 8 inches off the water. You're right there with whatever you're catching, and it's awesome.
All right, one more time. What's the YouTube channel for?
My YouTube channel is True Lovin' Fishing.
Is it LUVIN Lovin', or is it LUVING?
It's TRULUVIN.
True Lovin' Fishing. Check that out. Okay. Well, we're about. I got to pause anyway. Stop anyways, because we're gonna. If you go too far on these things, the SD card goes crazy. So you're listening to Never Off Duty. Thank you so much. This was awesome. I hope we have you on again. Thank you for coming back.
Always an honor, Judson. Thank you for having me.
It was a great time.
Again, subscribe, share it with your friends, and send in those questions. You're listening to Never Off Duty.